Hey everyone, welcome. Today is week 4 of book club. So we are doing chapter 4. I have to say, this is my favorite chapter so far. It is, if you have any kind of doubt that the mind is responsible for a lot of symptoms in the body, then read this chapter. It was so convincing. Actually, there are a lot of slides to go through today. I really enjoyed doing the slides and having that organization, and actually got the approval from Howard Schubiner himself this week. So that was really good. He said the slides are looking good and a good way to introduce this material to you guys. So I'm happy to share it. And I think we need to start at the beginning here. Okay, so chapter 4, Unlearn Your Pain. And really all this chapter is about how pain develops the role of the mind. So like I said, if you have any doubt of how much the mind is involved, this chapter is the one for you. I just wish everyone had a copy of this chapter. So our body reacts to mental events that occur in most people on a regular basis. We don't notice them. We attribute them purely to physical causes. So our body is constantly like tightening or guarding or sighing or a little gurgle in the stomach. And most of the time we think of, something we did or something we ate, right? We don't think of the emotional components or the stress that could be going on. Or if there is stress, we're so used to stress, we kind of minimize it. But the truth is, the body is a barometer of the mind. I love that quote. And it reflects what's going on in the mind every minute of every day. So he has this example of a Vietnam vet that would just randomly get this leg pain. And it turns out his wife actually noticed that it was a helicopter sound every time he would get it randomly. So it was hard for him to even notice, right? That's part of what I wanted to say with that example. And it was so subconscious. He didn't realize that he was having that. Okay, so a brief history of mind-body syndrome. So he talks about conversion syndrome. They used to have this conversion disorder, and people would just go numb, like their arm would go numb or their body would get paralyzed or they couldn't speak. And the development of deep tendon reflex testing, when medicine developed the testing for, when they hit your hammer or they hit your knee with a hammer, that deep tendon reflex would show that people weren't really paralyzed. So once that became a thing, they were like, oh, the muscle is actually working, this reflex is working, then this conversion disorder stopped happening. Or sometimes it would still happen, but it was way less common. But other symptoms are more common, more popular in our society. But again, they weren't, the brain had taken over their body and created those odd and serious symptoms. They weren't faking it. They weren't faking being paralyzed, but there was no structural cause to it. And then there are, so choices of the mind. Paralysis, that conversion disorder, has been replaced by chronic back pain, fibromyalgia, fatigue, IBS, and many other symptoms. And they've actually found that there is a social contagion, is what they call it. One example is with medical students getting the diseases that they're learning about or having symptoms of those. I definitely experienced that as a physical therapist, having an exact same pain of a patient that I treated earlier that day. And they even did a study between East and West Germany, and they were hypothesizing, even back then, that back pain is a communicable disease and suggest harmful influence of back-related beliefs and attitudes transmitted from West to East Germany. So it's so interesting, right? That if you think about how much our society talks about, symptoms, aging, especially, oh, I just, 30-year-olds are like, oh, I'm so old. I feel so old, right? We're just conditioned to believe so many things about our bodies and how they're going to feel. And we also can pick up on other cues that people are talking about, we can have those in our own bodies. We're bombarded with television ads for medications of all types of conditions, which increases the number of people who get these conditions. That's crazy, right? Like another side effect of marketing. I don't think they even realize that they are doing. Strong emotions are often too dangerous. Oh, so this is from Sarno. So in this chapter, Dr. Schubiner goes over like the history and different perspectives of mind-body syndrome. And Sarno was much more focused on suppressed emotions. And so some people, that's really what they emphasize. And what I want you to see in this chapter is it's a whole bunch of different factors. So suppressed emotions can be part of it. So Sarno said strong emotions are often too dangerous or disturbing to be felt or expressed, and therefore these emotions are kept in the subconscious by means of suppression. So for some cases, and definitely, some people have just done some of the expressive writing and their symptoms totally go away. But there are a lot of different things that we'll talk about. And sometimes we're thinking like, well, what is this big thing? What is this main stress? And can't really think of a big stressor going on. And that is normal. Dr. Schubiner says gradual onset of headaches, back pain, abdominal or pelvic pain, loose stool, frequent urination, ringing in the ears, trouble sleeping, or other common symptoms can happen. And there's no major life stressor going on. So most people at some time in their life have some form of mind-body syndrome just by being a human, and that's normal. Okay, so this is actually so much more common than we think. This is not just happening in rare cases with people, with really hypersensitive neural circuits or nervous systems. This is happening in people at some point. And then it's more common in other people, and we'll talk about why. So if it's happening after an injury, it could be a combination of life stressors and a persistent worry about the injury or pain, or worry about the pain of the injury, right? So Alan Gordon in The Way Out, he describes it well as fear of my pain turning chronic is what made my pain chronic. The fear, the persistent worry, that can be a factor of perpetuating these cycles of chronic pain. The subconscious mind. So it's estimated that 95% of our thoughts, feelings, and memories reside in the subconscious. So only 5%, around 5% is going on in the subconscious mind that we know about. That's what we understand and what we can, put our finger on. A lot of it is subconscious, the majority, and that means it's below our conscious awareness. We don't even realize it's going on. Our brain is taking in 11 million bits of information per second, and the conscious mind can only process 40 bits per second. So a lot is going on beneath the surface that we are not aware of. So sometimes when people are like, well, I'm not feeling stressed, that's what they're not understanding, they're not putting words to, they're not linking up any kind of stressor in their mind, but the subconscious mind may still be sensing a danger and having a stress response. And many times we're not even consciously aware of our actions until we perform them. So actually, as I was saying that, I was kind of like rubbing my fingers together, and that just came to my conscious awareness as I was talking. But he gives the example of lifting a finger, that can happen so subconsciously as you go to reach for your cup. You're not consciously aware of all the little events that are going on in the mind to produce that. And it's a good thing. This keeps our mind efficient, right? We're not having to learn to rewalk every day and how to chew up food and what things we like and don't like. Our subconscious already just runs these automatic programs. A cool study that they did found that people, when they were given random words, but the people in the group that were also given words like old, wise, retired, and gray, they walked more slowly to the next exam room than people that were just given random words. So Another example of how the subconscious can work in a mysterious way is this example with people holding either an iced coffee or a warm coffee. And if they were holding an iced coffee, they were more likely to perceive the person, that a stranger, as unfriendly. And if they were holding the warm coffee, they're more likely to perceive a stranger as friendly. So sometimes with mind body syndrome, we're like, well, let me try to make sense of all of this. And some of these things are just maybe some subconscious programs that we don't even understand once we see the pattern. Like with a warm coffee, why would that person be more friendly? Super interesting, right? Okay. And someone was asking, like, do you know how they got this 95% figure? Um, he just says it's estimated. I think he does give a resource. So, but you hear it around a lot. Um, so I could look up, but I have it on Kindle, and so I would have to get off this screen. But you can look up who the reference that he said about the 95%. It's in chapter 4. So brains can, oh wait, I already said this one. Okay, next slide. Reactions to stress. So emotional memories are stored in the brain in structures like our amygdala and hippocampus. And neural circuits that sense a dangerous situation will send signals to the amygdala within 12 milliseconds. So less than a second, a millisecond, 1,000, what is that? 1,000th of a second. Right. Very quick time. If our neural networks, our nervous system senses danger, our amygdala is already starting to respond. And this is way below our conscious awareness. It takes twice as long for the signals to get to the conscious part of the brain, right? So much is happening that we're not conscious of, but when we have pain, we're aware of it, we're conscious of it. It's getting our attention more and we focus on it, excuse me. And then we form, theories about it. It's with this movement, it's with this food. But this can just be an emotional speed dial, our nervous system reacting to something at a subperceptual level. There was a client he talks about that would get a severe bout of back pain only in the month of May. And it happened for 2 years in a row. And that's the only time she had back pain. And they figured out pretty quickly once he asked about that that's when her sister had died. So she had not put that together. Her dad had not put that together. But through the interview, Dr. Schubiner was able to figure out very quickly that's what your body is reacting to, nothing physical, just emotional pain. And later in the chapters, if you're wondering about this deep interview about your childhood, he goes through all of this. We'll go through it. So you don't have to necessarily go to him to be interviewed by him. It'll be later in the book, and you'll be able to go through your childhood and your history of symptoms and put everything together in the workbook part. Okay, so messages from the subconscious. Our brains do not use words to tell us there's perceived danger. Our bodies just react, often with pain. So when we have a stressful situation, when we feel trapped and unable to find a solution, our brain can react as if we're in grave danger. Think of a survival response, right? It's a going into freeze. It's like there's this mortal danger, and I could go into freeze just by sending an email that is, making an offer or having a difficult conversation with someone. So our body can react as if there's grave danger just because of these survival responses. And it could be when we're stressed, or especially this trapped emotion. He talks about this a lot. And I've heard him say every case of mind-body syndrome that he's ever worked with has an element of feeling trapped. So see if that relates to you, if that resonates with what you're dealing with. So basically, it will activate the danger alarm mechanism, cause tension in certain specific muscles. So people are like, yeah, but it's just my shoulder. It's just in this one spot. It's right where the rotator cuff is, right? that can be mind-body syndrome. That can be this emotional activation of the neural circuits. The tension in a certain area can create real pain. And then over time, the pain can worsen and become widespread. And that's usually what happens. Sometimes people treat one area, it goes away, and then another area comes up, or sometimes multiple areas, and then it's just getting worse and worse and starts in one area of the back and then it's the whole back. There's this great quote about just that. Your body was knocking to let you know that something was bothering you, but you didn't understand it. So it knocked louder and louder by creating more pain or new symptoms. When you didn't listen, it rang the doorbell. And finally, it threw a rock through the window to get your attention. So our bodies can be giving us clues. There was an example he gives of a man that went to a bachelor party and was feeling guilty about it, and then woke up the next day with growing pain. If you have buttock pain, maybe someone in your life is a pain in your butt. If you have difficulty swallowing, you may have a situation in your life that's hard to swallow. Or he found a woman with foot pain, and there was a situation in her life that she couldn't stand anymore. So I really like this idea of our body giving us clues. I like Louise Hay. She talks about most every part of the body, and even, conditions and what your body could be telling you. And it's not super scientifically based, but, as we're learning more and more about neuroscience, some of this may become more like science. It's just we've looked at things from a physical perspective only, examining the tissues and doing MRIs and X-rays and looking at the things that are going on chemically, but our brain is in control of all of that, our brain and nervous system. So I like that idea of our body giving us clues, because then it gives me a reframe and kind of some idea, because a lot of times when I get pain, I'm not exactly sure what the stressful thing is in my life. Like I just got some hip pain earlier this week and I was like, I don't even know what that's from. But then we've had a lot of car situations. My one kid totaled my car, and then another kid is getting a license and we bought her a car and it's had issues. So I'm like, yeah, there's stress in my life. Yeah, that does make sense. Right. And I think Louise Hay says the hip is like fear of moving forward or something. Right. So again, this isn't like hard science, but also it gives your mind, some other story rather than this is damage. This is something I'm going to have to deal with forever or whatever. Okay. Yes. And someone says, I felt trapped. I did have a structural injury at first, and my elderly mom was very sick, and I didn't know how I was going to care for her. Yeah, it can start with a physical injury. Or sometimes people don't have any reason. They just wake up with pain and they're like, I must have slept wrong, right? But look for those other things in your life and make sense of it that way. That can really help with resolving the symptoms. Okay. So what if you know what the stressors are, but that doesn't reduce the symptoms? Yeah, definitely just knowing what the stressors are doesn't necessarily mean the symptoms will go away. The way to help symptoms go away is to view them differently. So when they do come up, we talk about this later. I'll talk about this later in the slides, but yeah, just knowing what the stressors are doesn't necessarily mean we've addressed the stressors or that we're not criticizing ourselves or taking them personally. That's a good question though. And then other times people don't even know what the stressors are, but they get their symptoms to go away through this process. The stressors can be mild, okay? So something like finding a parking place, being late for a meeting, having a difficult conversation, worrying about a child, or getting sick. So many times there are mild stressors going on that we just think are part of life, and that's why mind-body syndrome is part of life. And I've even had examples when, I had a lot of symptoms one day and I was like, what is going on? I don't even really, nothing big. And then I was realizing like my son was going to Marine boot camp. So I was like, oh yeah, there's that. Like I coach people so many times when they're it's like we're oblivious. We have these blind spots to like our stressors somehow. And then we get talking in a coaching session, 40 minutes in, they're like, oh yeah, there was this thing with my boss where he yelled at me and threatened to fire me. You know what I mean? It's just sometimes we know what the stressors are. Other times it's so fascinating. There can be stressors we're just not aware of. And we don't have to know what they all are. So don't think, I have to figure it all out. You can calm your nervous system generally without having to know what exactly is going on. So things are constantly happening, and we don't pay attention to all of the little twitches and sighs and like throat clearings or whatever, right? That our body is doing, but they can just be going on. And pain is one of them, but we pay attention to it, right? So it's just very interesting to see this bigger picture. Our body's constantly adapting at the subconscious level. We just pay attention to certain things. Okay, so here's this next slide, which is talking about how we get them to go away. It's not just by recognizing the stressor. This is how Dr. Schubiner says it. I recognize I may be stressed about something. I deal with the stress as best I can. I gently let my subconscious mind know that I don't need the pain to alert me to a dangerous situation or to get me out of something I don't want to do. You guys, I love that last one especially. I don't know how many times pain will come up with people before an event. And maybe it is something that they want to do. Maybe it's like a fun trip that they want to go on, but they get pain right before it. So it's almost like pain can come up to get you out of something, to keep you safe, in quotation marks, to keep you safe at home. And definitely a lot of us that are people pleasers, we commit to things that we don't want to do and then happen to have those symptoms that come up right before that event and get us out of it. So it's not like we're doing it purposely. It's not like we're faking, but I like that he mentioned that part of it, because sometimes that is a side benefit of pain, is that we're not having to do some of the activities or events or chores or things that we don't want to do. Again, it's not in a blaming way, and this is all happening so subconsciously. Someone says even something like planning a vacation can be stressful. Yeah, I think of it as like our brain sometimes deals with the unknown as a stress. So it could be like, we're just figuring out a restaurant of where to go, and I'm getting a symptom because my brain is, there's an unknown. But it's not a big deal if we know how to handle it, because all these symptoms are going on, coming and going within seconds or minutes. So as long as we're not attaching a big story to them and starting to get upset about them or fearing them or worrying about them, they can actually pass through. And this is what we're talking about on this slide. I don't need the pain to alert me to a dangerous situation or get out of something I don't want to do. There is no danger here. You're just softly, gently reassuring your brain that. And he says, I'll smile, calmly move on with what I'm doing so my brain knows nothing is wrong. And it will allow that neural circuit to turn off in a few minutes or so. Has anyone experienced that? I definitely experienced that. I've been just like hearing a lot of people talk about tinnitus lately, and I'll get a ringing in my ears now sometimes. And it always comes and goes. It doesn't last long. It hasn't lasted for more than a few minutes, knock wood, knock on wood. But when you have this attitude of curiosity with these new symptoms, and you can just reassure your brain, okay, you're thinking something stressed. We're okay. I've got you. We're safe. It can allow that to just switch right off, and you don't have the symptom anymore. The symptoms are perpetuated when we focus on them and worry about them and Google them and try to fix them and have lots of treatments for them. If you can, like Dr. Schubiner says, carry on with what you're doing so your brain knows nothing is wrong. Sometimes you do have to stop though, right? And that's fine too. You don't have to, okay, I have to just, push through, and it's agonizing. Listen to your body case by case. But that attitude of like, we're good, nothing's wrong. That's how you get through it. Yeah. You guys have some good stuff in the chat about your experiences with walking, ankle hurting, told my brain it's okay, and it went away. Yeah, you guys, this happens so much to me. And I've even made comments about it in the Facebook group, Tell Me About Your Pain. Like, just in the last week, I had like all these 3 symptoms and they went away. And some people are like, that's so discouraging to hear. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I don't want to hear about other people's symptoms when I'm deep in my own, and the thought that they're never going to go away and things will always be happening. But part of the reason we stay stuck in pain is because we expect that at some point we'll never have these pains again. The more we're like, okay, this is normal for my body, things come and go. And even in 5 years, when I've been doing this work for 5 years, or even Dr. Schubiner, like he still gets sensations. He just knows how to handle them differently and they go away. We do want that communication with our bodies. We want to know if we have our hand on a hot stove to take it away. And we want to know when emotionally we're maybe not standing up for ourselves, or there are things that we're suppressing that we really want to say. We're not being our true selves. We want to know those kind of things. Okay, so yes, there's a saying, keep calm and carry on. Yes, exactly. So components of the subconscious mind. Freud noticed that we have this subconscious. We can have a conscious thought about someone. I love this person. I want to take care of them. And we can have conflicting feelings. I don't want to take care of them. I want my independence. This is lame, whatever. He didn't say lame, I'm sure, but I don't want this. But we have this strong need. This is even, we know from neuroscience, we have this strong need to feel safe and protected, to feel connected to those who care about us, and to feel loved and needed. On the other hand, there's also a strong need to become independent, to be assertive of our wants and needs, and to be able to make decisions that affect our lives. So when we're heavy on trying to get the love, and we're not being assertive of our wants, we're not able to make decisions, then that can end up in the mind-body syndrome, these symptoms, because the subconscious mind is just letting us know that. So the impact of childhood hurts. He says every child gets hurt in some way. And Dr. Clark, he is another famous doctor in this world. So he says, if you think about your childhood, and if you were like a butterfly on the wall, I think he says, or fly, and if you were noticing from this fly on the wall perspective, looking at your childhood, were there any things that you wouldn't want your own child to go through? So I know for me, I didn't have abuse or capital T traumas, but I still internalized some things. I was sensitive to criticism. I was trying to be perfect, all of these kinds of things. So at first I was like, well, I don't identify with people. I don't have a high ACEs score, but I still developed ulcerative colitis and irritable bowel. So the mind body stuff was still like a lot of the things I'd learned and internalized. I was very critical of myself and perfectionistic, all of those things. That was what was causing the distress in my nervous system, in my body. And it wasn't necessarily because of my childhood. Or maybe, there were things in my childhood. He talks about even being teased at school, that could lead to mind body syndrome 20 years later. So, and there were things like that, right? I had some really awkward years in middle school, and I definitely was not feeling loved and accepted. And so that would be enough to create, fear of being unaccepted in the future. And then those compensation patterns of people pleasing, things like that. So they know from research, childhood hurts lead to an overly sensitive autonomic nervous system in adulthood, and you're more likely to develop MBS. So they've shown that in animal testing, that when they have trauma or, stressors, I should say, stressors in childhood, they're more likely to have an overly sensitive nervous system as an adult. And then there's the conscience, the traits of guilt, self-criticism, low self-esteem, high expectations for yourself, extreme responsibility for others, and self-sacrifice. I just noticed a typo. Extreme response. There's a few typos I'll correct before I put out the slides. So do these traits sound familiar? Do you feel like you're high on guilt, self-criticism, low self-esteem? A lot of people with mind-body syndrome resonate with one or more of those. And then also feeling trapped, unable to speak up. Exactly. So there is a good question here. I've just been keeping an eye on the chat to kind of see if there's some things that are related to bring up or good questions that I feel like we can address. One sec. The stress level, she says, does our stress level need to be low and not high to be able to heal? So, ideally, we want to do what we can to create less stress for ourselves. And yes, in lower stress, you'll be able to heal better. But, someone might say, well, I'm in this stressful situation, you know, because of my mom or something. And they're like, does that mean I just have to cut off ties with my mom? That can be, your stress level is something that's perceived by you through your thoughts and your subconscious thoughts. So yes, the stress level being low is important, and just realizing that the stressors from the external world it's what our nervous system is perceiving as stress. So it's always going to perceive some things as stressful. We may be able to modify those with our thoughts without having to change all of the external things. Because you know what? You could be laying on a beach and still feel stressed because of your mind, right? So it's not just saying, change all the external things and then you'll heal, or you have to change everything external until you heal. But the more in general that you can start to feel more peace and calm in your life and get to that rest and repair state, that's the other state other than these high stress states that is conducive for healing. And then, oh yeah, such a great, so here's another one from the chat. So I'm oversensitive to noise. Could that be because my parents yelled and fought? Yeah, exactly, right? It's like a hypersensitivity to something that was emotionally disturbing as a child. Absolutely. Okay, you guys, this was so interesting to me. When I first read this book, I had volume 3, and in the 4th edition, they added this. So although all the data isn't in yet, this appears to be occurring in a significant number of people with long haul COVID and a host of other disorders that are beginning to appear to be manifestations of MBS, such as chronic Lyme disease, mast cell activation syndrome, chronic Epstein-Barr virus, mild Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and others. I put this in because, again, this is a new area of science. We are just starting to learn about this. Data is COVID especially is so new, and so long haul COVID data is showing that it can be reversed with this mind body process. But my example is ulcerative colitis, which is autoimmune. And I know a lot of places they're saying, like, don't count autoimmune. This is just, there's the mind body syndrome, and then autoimmune is something totally different. Well, I am out of chronic disease. I don't have those symptoms anymore. I've healed from that. And it's through doing this work. So just be open to your symptoms, especially if you have a diagnosis like this and multiple other symptoms, because a lot of times people that are diagnosed with things like this their pain patterns do fit what we know about neuroplastic pain. Okay, so he talks about a woman with fibromyalgia who did his program, and this is how she changed and what she felt really helped with her healing. So she didn't say, I got out of stress or I got to a low stress state. This is what she did. She learned to fully express her emotions for the first time in her life. She finally decided to stand up for herself, not to let everyone walk all over her, and to make some decisions to do some things she wanted to do rather than continually acceding to others' desires. So this is an inside job more than anything else. And sometimes that does involve changing your situation to less stress. But there are other times that a really stressful job can be reframed and actually turn into a job that you're tolerating and is not stressful because of ways that we're perceiving it again. So this is the main kind of stuff that we're working on. This self-expression, feeling the emotions, having some boundaries, standing up for yourself, making decisions, putting yourself first, those kind of things we do have control over. The role of gender. Okay. This one, I think we've all realized, I think someone even said on the last call, look at how most of us are women here. So women are more likely to have mind-body syndrome. These are the reasons. They're more likely to be socialized to be deferential. So, you choose, you do that, right? They're more likely to take care of the needs of others before attending to their own needs. We're taught that, right? We're socialized to do that. Like, this is what a good girl does. Don't be selfish, right? Women are more likely to be victims of abuse. They're more likely to be expected to manage the duties of the home, even if they're working outside the home. They're more likely to care for children, aging parents or grandparents. They're more oriented towards wanting to please others if they feel like they, sorry, I'm going to read that again. They're more oriented towards wanting to please others, and they feel like they should be better or do more. You guys, I relate to that. Even when I look back, I'm like, you know what? I did really great things with my kids and I was a good mom. But at the time, I was like, I should be better. I should do more. And they're less likely to assert themselves, more likely to worry. Men are more likely to be assertive and blame others rather than themselves for their problems in their lives. So that can actually because they're more assertive, they're not necessarily taking on those things and having these mind-body problems in that way. But of course, men still have mind-body syndrome too, because almost everyone in the world and in life does at some point or another as part of being human. So he gives the example of, a guy that he had moved and he was teased when he moved in, elementary school or something at a younger age. And then in his 20s, he starts to get these symptoms. So and he might have been assertive. We don't know. There's many, many factors. Basically, he says our body is a barometer of what's going on in our environment and how we react to it. Two components: the stressors, the things in our environment, the beliefs, and how we're reacting to them. And then mind-body syndrome and healthcare. So this can actually, a lot of times we get a diagnosis and that is going to actually create more pain because it creates fear. There's the belief that something's seriously wrong with the body. And then that activates the danger alarm mechanism, which creates more pain by ramping up the learned neural circuits of MBS. So he describes so many reasons, so much evidence in this chapter. When I was reading through it, I was like, oh yeah, the mind is so powerful. And all of these things. Oops, there's someone unmuted here. I'm going to actually get off of the screen here and go to you guys. And be able to mute someone whose mic is on. And we have some time for questions and discussion. And I'm going to, if someone wants to raise their hand and maybe share anything that they realized from this or that they have a question about pertaining to this chapter. And in the meantime, if you're going to raise your hand, it's in the reactions section. I'm going to read this from Cindy. I understand the impact of childhood pain, even situations which wouldn't cause pain in others. But this movement to focus on these childhood hurts often berates mothers, even those who do love their kids and always strive to do right by them. I talk of this mother pain that has led to real difficulty within families that are otherwise normal and functioning. I'm aware of several families where now grown kids from loving families have cut contact, blamed the mother, caused real rift with families. Other siblings don't feel that there was abuse. Yeah, exactly. So, and then she said, sorry, I was just kind of trying to sum up. I understand each child perceives their families differently. I'll just read it. But this movement has been particularly damning to mothers, and you don't hear much about father pain. Maybe the lingo needs to change. Oh, I know, dude. I'm a mom of 4 kids, and it's been really hard with them as teenagers because something that, maybe I didn't mean to do, they'll say like, oh, I felt, neglected or, so yeah. And that can weigh on the mother, right? So it is complicated. I think I heard somewhere it's just in our genes, in our survival genetics for children to look for something to blame in their parents so that they're not doing the same thing with their offspring. It's just this like kind of circle of life thing. But absolutely, it can perpetuate more symptoms in the child and the mother. Okay, let's go to Roseanne. You have your hand up. What's up?
Hi.
Hi.
First, thank you. You're just great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
I just want to say I joined Curable a year and a half ago, read Alan's book, and I was 18 years in this. Okay. And I just made gangbusters progress. And I separated in August from an abusive marriage. We're headed to divorce. We're having foundation issues on the house, and I have a tumor on my spine that I'm going to have surgery for, right? It's benign, but,
Mhm.
and on my leg flared in all of this because I had lost my pain brain when I moved out from my husband.
Mhm.
My nervous system was just relaxing
Mhm.
more and more and more. And my pain brain was gone.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought it was gone and I thought I was home free, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but you're still a human, I guess. So
Right.
it's never going to be
And
gone.
so I flared it up, and it's been a couple months now, but I'm finally starting to get a handle on it, and that it is neuroplastic.
Yeah,
And I've
good.
taken a huge deep dive, but I wanted to share an experience, which is why I am getting on. So I listened to Lorimer Mosley's talk. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. He's
Yeah.
amazing, and encouraged me to try just a tiny little bit every day, increasing my movement because this flare, my brain just went woo.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
crazy. So anyway, um, but last night I woke up in the middle of the night with my sensations, and I did some somatic tracking,
Mhm.
and it
Good.
took it away. So I
Yeah.
was able to get back to sleep without taking anything and for pain. I woke up in the morning and I felt good.
Yeah.
I felt good.
Yeah.
And then I was sitting here contemplating this morning, and all of a sudden my fear kind of started
Yeah.
kicking in, and I felt it. And I
Yeah.
felt a little sensation in my ankle. And I said, I just let the fear move through me. You know
Uh,
how they talk about, I let
yeah.
the fear move through me,
Yeah.
and I feel good again.
Uh-huh.
It's a baby step,
Yes.
but
I
it's
love
all
that.
in the baby steps.
It is. Yes, exactly. I've had so many experiences with that. This is what Dr. Schubiner describes. It's totally possible. And I'm so glad you're able to share that with us because
Yeah.
sometimes we can react to it and it doesn't go quite as well. And we have some symptoms that last a few days or a few weeks, but many times, like I was talking about my hip that was, hurting earlier. And throughout the week, I've noticed so many times it doesn't hurt. And then times it does hurt. Oh, I was on the ski lift and it stopped. I actually saw someone stretching their hip and my hip started to hurt. Um, feeling trapped in a situation, sitting too long. So interesting,
Yeah.
the emotional component and how you can just let that fear, like letting the fear go through you. That's
Yeah.
such a good concept.
I haven't been able to do that so easily before, but it was like I feel like it's a huge win. And thank you
Yay.
so much. Your class is incredibly great. Thank you,
Oh, you're
Betsy.
so sweet. Thank you so much. I was just looking at the chat and Jen said, sometimes symptoms can lead us to deeper healing, right? That's what I think about when, especially that's why I like that idea that you know, that symptoms do have some kind of purpose from our brain. It's indicating to us from this symptom of the foot that you're not wanting to stand up for yourself or something, right? Yeah, so I think it is good sometimes when we have those symptoms so that we can heal that old wound. Okay, so let's see, is there anyone else? If you want to raise your hand, Tanya asked me, tell us briefly your way of healing, what helped you most, how did you recover or get better? So I see mine as a process. It's interesting because I discovered this stuff when I was getting divorced. I'd already moved out. So it was a time of a ton of stress, but in a way I was also like totally like rebuilding my whole life. So I discovered about this stuff around the same time that I was really drawn to hot yoga. I feel like that helped calm my nervous system a lot. It was like the only time where I felt peace. So I started getting into things like breathing, meditation, Joe Dispenza. This was all before Curable came out. So I was going off like Sarno and I was doing some of the expressive writing, but I was also doing like Joe Dispenza, like meditation, and got onto this like meditation streak. I think I did for almost a full year and then missed one day. A little bit perfectionistic still. But the other thing was I was just really getting into coaching and understanding the personality traits that I had that were leading to chronic pain for me. I like mentioned already, high achiever, perfectionist, sense of duty, wanting to be good. I was raised in a religious environment, so I was just like, what is this, good thing? I have to be good all the time. What are people thinking about me? So for me, it was a lot of internal work with calming my nervous system about myself. Like, I'm good enough. I'm a good enough mom. I don't have to, do more all the time. I can relax about things. I learned to ask for help and receive help a lot because I was going through my divorce and people were offering, and it's so hard to accept help. But all of those had a cumulative effect of, like, for me, addressing the things that were stressing me out and calming them for me, and finding, and there have been some people that as you stop people pleasing, it does, make some people mad. And there have been some changes in those kinds of, friend groups and things like that. But overall, it's just been a process of me just really becoming more me, and, having more of a voice, standing up for myself, not just being a people pleaser all the time, even though I want to go into that a lot of times. It's just this process, and it's really a lifestyle change. That's how I would look at it. I'm trying to think if there are any other specific things. Oh, a book club on any of Joe Dispenza's books would be fun. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's about time for me to revisit some of those because it's been a few years. Once I found Curable, and then I think like when The Way Out came out a couple of years ago, that's when I was really like, oh my gosh, I think I am gonna like, I do want to do coaching and I do want to coach on this. Um, but yeah, even before then, I was starting to piece together how much of it was like emotional and nervous system stuff, and just kind of naturally gravitating towards things that calm my nervous system, like yoga. But for other people, that may activate their nervous system. So it's a very individual journey. Um, but definitely those were things that helped me. Okay, you guys, we have a few more minutes. Anyone else have a comment or question?
I have a question.
Hi, welcome. Yeah.
Hi.
Anna or Anna?
Yeah, Anna.
Anna, hi.
Hi. So you mentioned earlier, I don't want to misquote you, but you said something about how it's easier to heal if you're in a less stressed nervous system state.
Yeah.
But my question is like with neuroplastic pain, is it like there's no tissue damage? So are you healing? Or I guess I was just confused
Hmm.
by that. So I was wondering if you could just maybe talk about that.
Okay. So like there's not tissue damage. So you could even say you are healed. um,
Okay.
there's no tissue damage to heal. So maybe just thinking of it as rewiring neural pathways, it's easier to
Okay.
rewire neural circuits when you're in when you're not in a fear-based state. Basically, we know there's the pain fear cycle. So
Okay.
you could say pain stress cycle, same type of thing. Fear is a general term for all kinds of like stress, worry, even disappointment, frustration. The pain fear cycle makes it harder for those neural circuits to do anything different, right? They just get more strong and they wire together and fire together. But when we can create new neural pathways, that's when our symptoms will go down.
Okay, so you would say it's easier to create new neural pathways when you're in a less stressed state? I guess
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
I'm having a hard time like wrapping my brain around some of this stuff. So I guess that's why maybe
Okay.
this question seems really
Yeah.
specific, but I'm just trying
Yeah.
to wrap my brain around it.
Well, okay. Well, and this is, just like from the nervous system perspective, stress, it's perceived, first of all. So it's
Hmm.
not like there's just a stressor and it acts on us. There's something out there and we perceive it as dangerous or not. So our
Hmm.
nervous system is already either going into a survival state or it's in the parasympathetic calm rest and repair state. And so when we're in a survival state, it's hard to change those neural pathways because
Okay.
our body is activated, it's reacting subconsciously.
Okay.
Does that help?
That does help. I guess I just think like, yes, it's easier to heal your body in the rest and repair state because that's like the state you're in, the
Yeah.
rest and repair.
Yeah.
But then if there's no tissue damage, then what are you healing? And I guess it's just like creating new neural pathways.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
So
maybe that word healing is what's deceiving.
yeah,
Because
I was
if
just
there's no
having, I
tissue
was start,
damage, what does healing mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. If
So,
there's like, because that's sort of like the whole idea
yeah.
is that there's no tissue damage. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like of this book. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just trying to wrap
But
my brain around stuff.
yes. Yeah. I think because there's no tissue damage, it doesn't mean that um, we're not having real symptoms. Those are just neural
Yeah.
pathways, just neural circuits. And those neural circuits are more activated. They're activated by the nervous system and a highly sensitive nervous system. So
Okay.
I wasn't sure if the reason you were asking is because it's kind of like, okay, I've got to do all these things so I'm not stressed so I can heal. And sometimes that can even be stressful to be like,
Yeah.
lower all my stress so I can heal. And you're not able to do that. And so how can I heal? So we're just creating new neural pathways. And the best way is going to be through things that feel calming and soothing to you and are not fear generating.
Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, it does feel like, I mean, like I have a 5-year-old. It seems like every year there's like a lot of stressors and
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
want to heal from all the, you know, mind body stuff. It just seems like impossible to be and not have any stress. So I don't know.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, we don't want to use this information against ourselves as like, well, I'm never going to be able to heal because I'm a doctor and I work in a stressful environment. Like I coach one woman who's a physician in a prison, and
Mm,
she told me about how stressful that was every day going to a prison. And then she also saw how much safety is there, right? And how much, like, that's actually one of the safest places she could possibly work. There's security guards everywhere. There's all of these, implementations designed for safety. So she didn't have to change her job to heal. She just had to feel better. She just had
Mm.
to view things differently and not react to the nervous system stressor with more stress. React to the nervous system stressor with like, oh, this is okay. I can see it differently. It's actually, there's no tiger chasing me. There's no actual danger. And then her neck pain went away.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We're about done here. There's some interesting stuff in the chat. I'll just read real quick. If we hurt, we can still need to heal, not just like wounds healing. It's important for us to relax and stop hurting. That is a kind of healing. I know, I think we're getting into semantics, and sometimes healing makes it sound like, we're broken or something, but we can also be like, we need to, resolve that emotional distress. That could be healing. We can't get rid of all stress. We also need to learn how to take good care of ourselves in the face of stress. Yeah, thank you, Tara. And then, we learn a new way to handle stress. And it's more how we react to the stress than trying not to have it. Yeah, I think we're all getting on the same page here. We are never going to get out of stressors in our lives. And I'll tell you what, one last thing, like, I have a kind of busy, anxious mind. And I was like, always so much to do, all these kind of things, go, go, go. And when COVID hit, my job went remote. And so I was able to save a lot of time not having to drive to visits and stuff. And then my brain started noticing the dust on the baseboards and the closets that needed to go through. And I still had this sense of there's so much to do, there's not enough time, even though all the circumstances had changed that were my previous stressors. So sometimes we perpetuate these stressors too, just by our anxious mind and how we're perceiving things. So good questions. Definitely keep going with this work, you guys. We are going to do chapter 5 next week, and we will be in touch then. Take care. Bye. Thanks.